I know it's too emotional, but still we have to continue. And I'm here to announce my next guest, the former NATO Secretary General, George Robertson, who joins me now. Hello and welcome to Spotlight Ukraine.
Hello, good evening.
Pleased to meet you. And the first question, Jens Stoltenberg visited Ukraine for the first time since the full-scale invasion. And this was a few weeks before the expected counteroffensive of the Ukrainian army. So what do you think the NATO leader brought to Kyiv? And perhaps something that should not be discussed on the phone?
What he brought was a sense of solidarity with the people and the government of Ukraine. But he also brought a sense of unity between the NATO nations, the 31 countries of NATO who stand in absolute solidarity with Ukraine at this difficult time. There is no doubt at all that Vladimir Putin believed at the beginning of this exercise that he could divide the Europeans, from the United States, and that he could somehow stop the onward march of NATO membership. In all three areas, he's catastrophically been wrong. NATO is now bigger and it is stronger. Europe is more united than it ever has been before. And the United States and Europe are welded together in a determination to make sure that Ukraine prevails.
By the way, in one of the first interviews after you had been elected as NATO Secretary General in 2009, you said that you would like to improve the alliance's relations with Russia. If you have been elected the Secretary General of NATO now in 2023, what would you say about the alliance's relations with Russia?
Well, I was appointed in 1999 after the liberation of Kosovo in the former Yugoslavia at that time. And yes, at that time we wanted and were very keen to establish a good relationship with Russia. And in the early stages, we had a good relationship with Vladimir Putin. And I had a cordial relationship in terms of the partnership that was established, especially after 9/11. And we created at the NATO-Russia summit in May of 2002 a new council, a NATO-Russia council. And Vladimir Putin that day signed the Rome Declaration, which committed Russia to recognizing the territorial integrity of all countries. Indeed, he stood beside me at the press conference following the summit meeting, and he said the following words, and I quote him directly: "Ukraine is a sovereign, independent nation state, and it will make its own decisions about security." That is what he said in 2002, but he has betrayed that sentiment, betrayed that promise, as well as breaking the United Nations Charter, the Helsinki Accords, the Budapest Memorandum, and the Rome Declaration itself. So if I was to be appointed to be the Secretary General of NATO today, my primary purpose, as it is with Jens Stoltenberg, is to make sure that the people of Ukraine are able to defend the sovereign territory of their country, and that NATO would side with them and stand with them at this terrible time.
Thank you. In one of your interviews with Deutsche Welle, you also said that we should expect more provocations from Russia. So what kind of provocations did you mean there?
I think that undoubtedly Russia will use provocations in terms of violence, in terms of attacks, in terms of surprises, and we should be ready for that. That's the nature of this particular conflict. But we need to be prepared, and we need to have the proper toolkit to be able to deal with any surprise provocations that come to us. And that is why it is so important that Ukraine and Ukrainians get the ammunition, they get the missiles, they get the equipment in order to make sure that they can confront the Russian military effort at this present time. We need to be ready and prepared for a number of surprises, But up to now, the Ukrainian forces have been remarkably resilient and inventive and successful.
Thank you. And now let's talk a bit about this strategic issue. So the Russian invasion of Ukraine revolutionizes the NATO military strategy. Shocked by the Russian atrocities, NATO is becoming the war-fighting alliance it was during the Cold War, committed to defending every inch of its territory from day one. That's my colleagues from New York Times declared. And NATO is an organization that took a holiday from history. Do you agree with this statement?
No, I don't. I think that there were times, certainly, where we hoped for the best. We were more optimistic than perhaps we should have been. But I think in the early stages of our relationship with Russia, there was a possibility of getting Vladimir Putin and the leadership of the Russian Federation to recognize that they had common enemies, common problems, common difficulties, and that cooperating with NATO was in the interests of the Russian Federation as a whole. So no, I think that there were times when perhaps we were optimistic, but we had good reason to be optimistic. It was not wishful thinking. It was a pragmatic view which was betrayed because Vladimir Putin made a decision that he was going to try and eliminate his next door country. I had a lot of good relationships with Ukraine at that time, with the leadership of Ukraine, then President Yanukovych, who was the regional governor of Donetsk, when I visited him for the first occasion, with President Kuchma and with the Ukrainian leadership. And we did actually foresee the possibility that we could build a sensible, worthwhile, practical relationship with Russia that would have contained Russia and made it a partner. But we were frustrated because Putin had decided on an imperialist objective ambition, and that is what destroyed our hopes.
How long can Russia keep fighting the war in Ukraine? What do you think?
I don't know how long they can keep fighting. It's very difficult for them at the moment. Pretty well all of their strategic objectives have been failed. They are running out of troops. They're running out of precision weapons. And they're digging in defensively and perhaps now resorting to the tactics they used in Syria, simply of blitzkrieg and the destruction of property. But, you know, things can happen. There is a dynamic involved in the world. Russia, when it was the Soviet Union, came out of Afghanistan overnight. They decided they couldn't win. It was costing money. It was costing people. And they made the decision to abandon their mission in Afghanistan. So, you know, I hope that Vladimir Putin now recognizes that he cannot and will not win this conflict with Ukraine and the whole of the West, and will recognize that and stop the fighting.
Thank you so much. Thank you once again. That was the former NATO Secretary General George Robertson, the guest of Spotlight Ukraine. Thank you so much and see ya. Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Latest news, trends, and analytics on all about Ukraine. Like, share, and subscribe. Any questions, proposals, and comments, contact us via email.